Hi Flute class. Today's video is about articulation, and notice I'm just working on the head joint right now. And this is part of the whole pedagogical idea that because just learning how to consistently make a sound is one of the harder things that our students have to learn how to do. So we want to make it as simple as possible by just working on the head joint. So it's actually really challenging to come up with activities that can keep everybody kind of engaged in the process before you put the entire flute together. So I think articulation is a great way to work on that. If you check a bunch of method books, what you're going to find is that a lot of these method books have people tonguing. Once again, we're not supposed to put our hands in our mouths, but kind of up on the roof of the mouth behind the teeth. And what's weird about this is that the world is full of method books that recommend that kind of like a up on the roof, but I don't know a single professional flutist who tongues there. So I don't understand why we're teaching people as beginners to tongue there when if they become really advanced players, they're not going to tongue there. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I much prefer the kind of the French approach, or which became the Suzuki approach, and that is having the tongue kind of flat and forward. So sometimes an image that you can use is you can take your, I don't have a real one, an imaginary tongue depressor and kind of say ah for the doctor, ah, and imagine that you're kind of flattening the tongue out. So the tongue's really flat and forward. The best way to teach this, let's see, put the, I have my trusty little bowl. Of course it's white on white, so you can't see anything. What I have here, oh, that might be slightly better. Oh, I just dropped it on the floor. All right, these are grains of rice. And this actually originated in France because they used to spit millet seeds, you know, with the tongue forward to learn kind of where to tongue and what the position of the tongue is and how to get the air behind the tongue. Remember, the tongue's job is just to put a clean beginning on the note. So the sound is not produced by the tongue. The sound is produced by the air. And that's a really important distinction. It might sound like splitting hairs, but when we're trying, you know, people get too involved with the tongue, it ends up sounding kind of like, you know, just not, I mean, it sounds really percussive. It doesn't sound like, you know, like we're sustaining notes. You know, it's hard to imagine how you could actually apply that to the music that your students would actually be playing. So I'm going to take my little grain of rice, which is too small to be seen in my little video. Oh, here we go. Okay, still can't see it. Perfect. All right, there it is. All right, I'm going to put it right at the tip of my tongue, and I'm just going to spit. Notice it just went right onto the stand. Well, that's good. A little less sweeping for me to do. So everybody loves doing this because it's fun to make a mess. And it's about the right size, so you're not really moving the tongue very much. You'll discover as we kind of progress on the flute that every time you're moving the tongue, you're also moving the air. And it creates a lot of instability in sound production. So we're trying to get the tongue to be just really flat and still. Oh, come on. It's stuck in my nail. Nice. Oh, there it is. So just flat. And just get the air behind it. I feel like this is just far and away the easiest, best way to teach articulation. So after you've spit some rice with your students, you have this idea that the tongue is really flat and there's not a lot of up and down. If I move my tongue up and down a lot, it gets really heavy and it's hard to go slowly. And once again, when the tongue moves up and down, the air moves up and down. So you know, so you get these weird little kind of inconsistencies in your sound. So the more kind of flat it is, the more consistent my sound production. The more my sound becomes about air and less about what the tongue is doing, which is the ultimate objective. Okay, so we're kind of, the syllable I think that works the best for describing articulation is to say two. Because the oo is encouraging you to get your lips forward. If your lips are really back, your air tends to be really spread, and it's harder to get it to go into the flute, which is the ultimate objective. So we're forward, the tongue is flat, and as forward as you can bring it. All right, so there are a couple of things in your packet I just want to show you if you're thinking, what can I do to keep my students busy on just the head joint? Well, they can learn to read music too. We have these things called head joint rhythm exercises, and this is, you see up here, there's a suggestion. The Numo Pro, it's a thing that we don't have, don't worry about that. Head joint, what it is, just to satisfy your curiosity, is this thing that has like a little cradle for your lip, and then it has a series of spinners. So it's a way for flute students to practice kind of spinning the little pinwheels, and so they can practice aiming their air. But we don't have one of those. You're not going to do the Numo Pro. She recommends here. She says play on the head joint first. And she also recommends clapping. I would say clapping, you know, we're assuming your students don't know how to read music yet, so learning to clap and count quarter notes, that sounds like a great idea. And then this is a way to practice your articulation. So I just played the first one on that. Your students might not be able to go that fast, but they also might not be able to go 2 measures on one breath. So I would encourage them, you know, try for a measure or even 2 quarter notes in a row. I think it's very, very important for the concept of articulation. It's very, very important that your students understand that you can tongue 2 notes in a row without stopping the air. A lot of them are going to want to do that, and some of them might even go. By the way, that is correct rhythm, but it's not articulation. I'm just going ha, 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 ha. That's not tonguing. So when you hear your students do that, maybe they just don't understand kind of where your tongue needs to be. So that's a great kind of clue that there's a problem and we need a little intervention with that. So, all right. So the other thing you can do with the head joint, that you can do the low and the high with covering. And that is, there's this other page in your book. It's called Extra Tricky Head Joint Challenges. And the idea is that when she writes it as A, which is, you know, kind of roughly what the pitch is, she'll write low and high here. So that's a good way. It's a way to get your students to practice something with a little more of an element of coordination in it. So I'm going to do Extra Tricky Head Joint Challenge number 1. So you'll see my head joint is covered with my hand for the low A, and I take the hand off for the high A. So I'm tonguing, I'm doing rhythm, I'm getting a sound come out of the head joint, and I'm covering and uncovering. So I'm thinking low and high. So again, it's just taking these exercises on just the head joint, making them just a little bit more complicated while spending more time on the head joint, which I think I said it earlier, but it's always challenging to keep your students from losing interest while you're trying to get some really good basic skills happening before we put the whole instrument together, which we will do in the next video. All right, so here's Extra Tricky Head Joint Challenge number 1. So I'm trying to get a clean kind of, not. Hopefully you can hear the difference. Let me do that one more time. So let me do the hoo-hoo with no tongue. Now I'm going to tongue, so we hear that clean T at the beginning. So it's really just about cleaning up the kind of the front of the note there. The main thing that makes tonguing on the flute different from tonguing on other instruments is that we're not tonguing on the flute. The whole activity happens inside the mouth. You might encounter students who kind of, you see how my tongue was between my lips there? There are a couple of problems with that. it's not the worst thing in the world. The good news is if your students try to do that, it means they're bringing their tongue forward. Yay, that's good. The bad thing is my tongue, see how big the aperture gets when I stick my tongue there. So you probably want an aperture. I think in an earlier video I was showing you how we wanted the aperture to be about the size of a drinking straw. That's quite a bit bigger than that. So you might run into students who don't know how to focus that airstream. The other thing is there's a lot of kind of recoil motion of the tongue. The more, if it comes really forward, then it's pulling back a lot. And once again, we're back to that original concept, which is the more the tongue's moving, the less stable sound production is. We really want things to move as little as possible. So let's avoid that. If you want a surface to tongue on, it's kind of right here. I'm kind of on the upper teeth. That's where the action of the tongue is, right there. I'm touching the inside of my mouth again. Oh, all right. Life in the time of coronavirus. All right, so that's your surface, but there's no reed for you to touch with your tongue. So that's kind of what's different about articulating on the flute. But yeah, you can make the rhythm more complicated. You can do the highs and the lows, just anything to kind of keep people engaged. And when you have that consistency of sound production and you can tongue, then you're ready to add the complication of holding the instrument, which we will do in the next video. All right, thanks everybody.